Have you ever stopped to think about why the more you have, the less free you feel? Why does the feeling of never being enough haunt even those who have everything? Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers in history, understood something profound that most of us take a lifetime to discover. It is not the man who has little, but the man who desires more, who is poor. What if true wealth wasn't about accumulating possessions, but about needing less? What if the freedom you desperately seek was on the opposite side of everything you were taught to chase since childhood? We live in an era that sells the idea that freedom comes through accumulation. More money, more things, more options. Modern society promised that the door to freedom opens with the key of consumption. Buy this, and you'll be happy. Achieve that, and you'll be free. But Seneca, over 2,000 years ago, had already identified this trap. He saw in this relentless pursuit not freedom, but disguised slavery. The more you desire, the more you lose control over your own life. Each new object of desire becomes a new master, a new chain, a new reason for anxiety. Society taught you to chase more status, more comfort, more security. And with each step of this journey, you believe you're walking toward freedom. But look at your life for a moment. The car that requires maintenance, the apartment that demands constant care, the digital subscriptions you forget to cancel, the clothes with tags still attached, the installments that force you to work at jobs you hate, the gadgets forgotten in drawers. Each possession brings with it an invisible weight, constant maintenance, fear of losing, anxiety about protecting. You buy thinking you're gaining freedom, but what you really gain is a new responsibility. One more worry, one more thing that can break, be stolen, or simply become obsolete. In the end, you're no longer the owner of your things. Your things have become your owners. You work to maintain them, worry about protecting them, live hostage to the fear of losing them. Look at the people around you. Those who have more aren't always the happiest. Often they're the most anxious, the most trapped, the most controlled by their own possessions. The man who owns 3 houses has 3 times more taxes, 3 times more maintenance, 3 times more worries, 3 times more headaches. The woman with a closet overflowing with clothes that barely fit in the wardrobes spends more time deciding what to wear, more time organizing, more time feeling inadequate because nothing seems enough than the one who has only the well-chosen essentials. The freedom promised by having more reveals itself in daily concrete practice, as a prison disguised as achievement, as a golden chain but still a chain. Seneca wasn't an advocate of misery or forced poverty. He was wealthy, had access to material comforts, intimately knew Roman luxury in all its opulence. But he understood the fundamental and critical difference between having things and being enslaved by having. His philosophy wasn't about living in absolute poverty with nothing, but about conscious and chosen moderation, about choosing simplicity not from lack of resources or capability, but from excess of earned wisdom. He said that true freedom is not being a slave to anything, nor to any created necessity. And this is only achieved when you learn to need little and feel complete with it. The Stoic minimalism that Seneca defended wasn't aesthetic or about appearances. It wasn't about having an all-white empty house with 3 strategically positioned pieces of furniture to post on Instagram and collect likes. It was about genuine and profound internal liberation. It was about understanding that each unsatisfied desire is an invisible chain that binds you to suffering. Each necessity artificially created by advertising is a new dependency that limits your freedom. And the more dependencies you've accumulated over time, the less real control you have over your own life and destiny. The equation is simple but powerful. Fewer things means fewer external dependencies, and fewer dependencies means more real and concrete autonomy over your existence. Think about this in a practical and concrete way in your daily life. If you need a lot of money every month to maintain your current lifestyle, you're forced to accept jobs you might not want to do. You're forced to make concessions that hurt your soul. You're forced to sacrifice precious time, physical and mental health, important relationships with those you love. You become hostage to your own created and accumulated needs. But if you learn to live well with fewer resources, if you reduce your needs to the well-chosen essentials, suddenly you have real power of choice. You can say no to bad offers. You can choose projects that deeply fulfill you instead of just paying bills at the end of the month. You can choose quality free time instead of overtime that drains your vital energy. Stop for a moment. Look around you now. How many objects do you see that you actually use? How many are essential? How many exist only because one day you thought you needed them but never touched again? This simple reflection reveals an uncomfortable truth. Most of what we own serves no purpose beyond taking up space and draining energy. Since childhood, you were taught that happiness can be bought. Commercials promise you that product will transform your life. Store windows seduce you with promises of a better version of yourself. Influencers show you seemingly perfect lives built around expensive objects and experiences. And you absorbed this message repeated 1,000 times. You need more to be happy. You need more to be accepted. You need more to have value. But Seneca already knew 2,000 years ago that this is a sophisticated lie. A lie that traps us in infinite cycles of working to buy, buying to impress, impressing to be accepted, and in the end never feeling truly satisfied. Because satisfaction doesn't come from outside. It never did. It never will. Consumer society built a perfect emotional prison. It convinces you that you're empty and sells you the solution. More things. You feel inadequate? Buy new clothes? You feel bored? Subscribe to more streaming services. You feel insecure? Buy status symbols. And with each purchase, you feel momentary relief, a brief moment of pleasure. But soon the emptiness returns, bigger than before. Because the emptiness was never about not having things. It was about not knowing yourself, not accepting yourself, not finding internal meaning. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Each attempt to satisfy desire through consumption only feeds more desire. You buy a new phone, and for a week you feel satisfied. But then you see a newer one, with more features, more modern. And suddenly that phone that made you happy a week ago seems obsolete. You feel the need to switch. The cycle starts over, infinitely, until you realize the problem was never the phone. It was believing that external objects can fill internal needs. And on social media, this trap becomes even more evident. They're giant stages of constant comparison. Each post is a veiled competition for who has the most interesting life, the most incredible experiences, the most desirable things. You see someone on a status trip and feel you need to travel too. You see someone's new car and feel yours is no longer enough. And the more you consume this edited content, the more inadequate you feel. The more you feel you need to have, do, be more. You're competing with edited versions of other people's lives, comparing your backstage with someone else's stage. In this impossible competition, you always lose. You always feel you're not enough. You always feel you're falling behind. Seneca fiercely criticized this slavery to others' opinions. He knew that when you live to impress, you're never free, because there will always be someone with more. There will always be a new goal. There will always be the feeling of falling short. And you become a slave not to your real needs, but to external approval, to social status, to constant performance for an imaginary audience that will never be satisfied. When you stop focusing on possessions as a measure of value, something transformative happens. Social pressure drastically decreases. Envy loses its power. Constant competition simply stops making sense. And suddenly, you have energy for what really matters. Authentic connections where you can be yourself. Deep self-acceptance without masks. True internal growth without performing for anyone. You stop living to impress strangers and start living to exist fully as you really are. Seneca had a mathematical way of seeing this. Fewer desires divided by more control equals greater freedom. The less you desire, the more control you have over your life. The more control you have, the freer you become. It's a logic that goes against everything the modern world preaches, but it's a logic that has withstood the test of time for over 2,000 years. He said that the shortcut to wealth isn't earning more, but desiring less. That not wanting something is as good as possessing it, because it frees you from worry, from fear of losing, from anxiety about getting it. When you don't desire that new car, you don't need to work overtime to buy it. When you don't need that status trip to post on social media, you don't need to go into debt to impress strangers. When you don't care about the latest smartphone, you don't need to feel envious of those who have it. The absence of desire gives you the same peace that possession would, but without any of the costs, none of the worries, none of the chains. Compare two lives. One person earns $50,000 a month, but spends 55. Lives anxious, always owing, always running around, always one step behind on bills. In debt, trapped in a job they hate because they can't afford to leave. Another person earns $5,000, but spends 3. Has savings, has leftovers, has security, has choices. Has freedom to wait for the right opportunity, to say no to what doesn't make sense, to choose according to their values, not according to their debts. Which of these two is richer? Who is freer? The answer is obvious, but it goes against everything we were taught. We were educated to measure wealth by what comes in, not by what stays. To measure success by what we accumulate, not by the peace we feel. To measure value by what we show, not by what we are. But Seneca knew that whoever masters their desires is more powerful than whoever masters fortunes. Because fortune can be lost in a day, in a crisis, in a mistake. But a mind trained in moderation is a fortress that no one can invade. It's a treasure that no one can steal. Think about people who suddenly made a lot of money. Lottery, inheritance, business that worked out. How many kept their fortune? How many didn't end up broke again a few years later? The problem wasn't lack of money. It was excess of uncontrolled desire. They never developed the internal capacity to have enough. So no matter how much they earned, they always wanted more, always spent more, always found new levels of need. Financial freedom isn't a matter of numbers in the account. It's a matter of a healthy relationship with what you have and what you need. And this healthy relationship opens doors that money alone never opens. It opens the door to conscious choice, to the dignity of not selling yourself, to the courage to follow your values even when it's harder, to the time to be present with those you love, to the peace to sleep at night without financial worries tormenting you. These are the true riches. And they come not from earning more, but from needing less. The philosopher was direct. Time is the only resource that can't be recovered. You can earn more money, can acquire new objects, but you can't buy back the years you spent accumulating instead of living. Can't recover the lost weekends organizing garages. Can't bring back the nights you spent worried about debts for things you don't even use anymore. Each unnecessary object is a thief of time. Each commitment assumed to keep up appearances is a betrayal of your limited time in this life. Think about how many hours per week you dedicate to maintaining your possessions. Cleaning, organizing, fixing, paying bills related to them, looking for things lost in the excess. Now imagine if you had half the things. Wouldn't you have half the work? And that recovered time, what would you do with it? Maybe finally learn that instrument that's been sitting there for years. Maybe spend more time with people you love. Maybe simply have peace to think, to read, to be. That time exists. It's just hidden behind the excess you carry. While you spend energy organizing, cleaning, paying, you lose what you could use to read, reflect, create, connect with those you love. Letting go of excess isn't loss. It's recovering your most valuable resources and redirecting them to virtue, true relationships, deep reflection, real growth. This is the math that society doesn't teach you, but that Seneca mastered perfectly. A space with fewer things reduces stress in ways that modern neuroscience only confirmed 2,000 years later. Fewer objects means fewer visual stimuli competing for your attention, fewer trivial decisions consuming your mental energy, less external chaos generating internal chaos. Seneca advocated limiting the body to give freedom to the spirit. A clean and simple space isn't just aesthetic. It's functional. It's liberating. It's the physical foundation for mental clarity. Do a simple test. Enter the most cluttered room in your house and observe how you feel. Observe your breathing, your muscle tension, your thoughts. Your brain is trying to catalog, organize, make sense of all that. It's exhausting. Then enter a simple, organized room with few objects. The difference is palpable. Your body relaxes. Your breathing becomes calmer and deeper. Your mind becomes clearer. This isn't placebo. It's the natural response of an organism that needs order to function well. External chaos generates internal chaos. External simplicity allows internal peace. There's also a type of emotional slavery, more subtle than the material. You keep things not because you need them, but because they represent memories, because they make you feel safe, because letting them go seems like losing a part of yourself. The clothes you wore on that special day 10 years ago, the gift someone gave you that you never liked but can't throw away, the object that belonged to someone who's already gone. You carry all this, literally and metaphorically, as if letting go of objects meant letting go of experiences, people, moments. But it doesn't. Detachment isn't cruelty. It's liberation. The memory is in you, not in things. When you let go of what you don't need, you're not losing memories, you're gaining space. Physical space, yes, but mainly mental space. Emotional space, space for the new, for the present, for what really matters now. Seneca understood that living trapped in the past, even through objects, is denying the life that's happening here, now, in this moment. It's refusing the freedom of the present out of fear of letting go of what already was. Having few needs gives you the power to say no. When you need little, you're not easily manipulated. Don't need to accept any job. Don't need to maintain toxic relationships out of interest. Don't need to subject yourself to situations that go against your values just to maintain a standard of living. Seneca, who deeply valued moderation, understood that saying no to the superfluous is saying yes to your own sovereignty. It's reclaiming your power of choice. It's living according to your own terms, not according to the expectations of the market or society. The freedom to say no is one of the most underestimated and powerful freedoms. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no, just because you felt you needed the money, the approval, the security that would bring? How many concessions did you make because your needs were many and your options few? How many times did you sell a piece of your soul because you thought you had no choice? When you reduce your needs to the essentials, you exponentially increase your capacity to choose, and choice is freedom in its purest and truest form. Imagine being able to say no to a job that pays well but drains your soul daily. Imagine being able to say no to social commitments you only accept out of obligation and that exhaust you. Imagine being able to say no to standards of living that society imposes, but that don't make sense for you and your values. Imagine being able to say no to everything that isn't aligned with who you really are deep down. This is only possible when you're not hostage to your own needs. When you've built a life that works with little. When you've trained your mind to find genuine satisfaction in the simple. This is the sovereignty Seneca spoke of. This is the tranquility of soul he pursued relentlessly. With few possessions, you can change cities, countries, lives, without it becoming a complex and expensive logistical operation. How many people live in places that don't make them happy just because it would be too much work to move with all the things they've accumulated? How many incredible opportunities are lost because life was built around heavy and expensive immobile objects? The person who receives a transformative offer in another city, but refuses because they'd have to sell or transport all the accumulated furniture. The person who dreams of traveling the world and experiencing other cultures, but is trapped in a house full of things they need to maintain and protect. Mobility isn't just physical or geographical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's the internal capacity to adapt to new circumstances, to start over when necessary, to choose again without the weight of possessions being an insurmountable obstacle. And the lighter you travel through life, the more options you have available. More doors remain open, more possibilities present themselves. Think about modern digital nomads. Many carry everything they own in a backpack or two and have the freedom to be anywhere in the world they choose, can follow opportunities when they arise, can explore different cultures, can experiment with different ways of living without being tied to a specific place. Not because they're millionaires, but because they're light. Because they haven't built their identities and lives around static material possessions, but around meaningful experiences and transportable mobile values. This is the mobility Seneca defended 2,000 years ago. Not necessarily literal physical mobility, although that's a natural and liberating consequence, but mainly the deep internal freedom of not being emotionally tied to anything external, of being able to let go when necessary and start over without it meaning losing who you are or what really matters in essence. Seneca and the Stoics valued quality over quantity. It's not about having many things, but about having the right things. Few instruments mastered with mastery are infinitely worth more than many used halfway. Fewer options lead to more excellence and real focus. When you have 100 shirts crowding your closet, you don't think about any of them. They're just numbers, generic objects taking up space. When you have 10 shirts you truly love and consciously chose, you care for them with attention, you wear them well, you truly value them. Excessive abundance generates inattention and automatic carelessness. Conscious simplicity generates genuine appreciation and attentive care. This applies to absolutely everything in life. Fewer books read deeply with full attention are worth much more than many only superficially skimmed and forgotten the next week. Fewer true friends with whom you can be vulnerable and authentic matter infinitely more than dozens of superficial acquaintances with whom you need to wear a social mask. Fewer projects executed with dedicated excellence and total focus generate much more concrete and lasting results than many projects done halfway without real attention. The culture of more insistently teaches you that quantity is success and more is always better. But Seneca knew profoundly that real mastery comes from focused simplicity, that true creative freedom comes from having fewer options that distract, not more options that paralyze. Because when you're not lost and confused in infinite possibilities, you can finally choose a clear direction and completely master it. Think about a guitarist who owns 3 guitars versus one who owns 50. Which one really knows their instrument? Which one developed true mastery? The one with 3 spends years playing the same guitars, knows every detail, every nuance of sound, develops a deep connection with each instrument. The one with 50 is always experimenting, always looking for the next one, never really mastering any, always thinking the next guitar will solve some problem that isn't about the guitar. More options don't mean more results. They mean more dispersion, more superficiality, less real mastery. One of the biggest fears that prevent people from letting go of excess is the fear of, what if I need it? What if I discard this and one day need it? What if I let go of that and later regret it? This paralyzing fear keeps houses full of things that are never used, garages cluttered with objects that will never see the light of day again, closets full of clothes with tags still attached. Seneca had a practical and profound answer to this fear: voluntary simplicity. He periodically lived with the absolute minimum: simple food, hard bed, basic clothes, no luxuries or comforts. Not because he was forced by external circumstances, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could, that he wasn't a slave to material comfort, that he had enough internal strength to deal with less without collapsing. And after these periods of self-imposed voluntary simplicity, he returned to his normal life with a deep and incredibly liberating certainty. He didn't depend on all that. If everything were lost tomorrow in a crisis, he would survive. He would be okay. He would manage to rebuild. This internal certainty is incredibly liberating and powerful. When you know you can handle less, the fear of losing stops controlling and manipulating you. The inconvenient truth is that most of the time, what you keep for fear of needing is never actually used. You accumulate tools you'll never use, clothes you'll never wear, gadgets that seemed essential but never leave the drawer. And when you really need something you don't have, what happens? You improvise with creativity, borrow from someone, find an alternative solution. Life happens and continues. Things work out somehow. The imaginary fear is always much bigger than the concrete reality. And while you live trapped in this imaginary and paralyzing fear, you carry the very real and measurable weight of things you don't use, that you don't need, that only take up precious physical and mental space and drain your vital energy daily. Think seriously. What would your life be like if you needed half of what you need today? How much less would you need to work to sustain this simpler lifestyle? How much more could you choose to do what you love instead of what just pays more? How much more time would you have for what really truly matters? For the people you deeply love? For the projects that genuinely fulfill you? Seneca wasn't proposing miserable and sad deprivation. He was proposing real and sustainable abundance. Abundance of free time, of inner peace, of genuine freedom, of deep meaning. The things that no amount of money in the world can buy, but that conscious and voluntary simplicity offers for free. The philosopher said we live as if we're going to live forever, but we die as if we never truly lived. Because we spend our entire lives accumulating things we don't need and that don't make us happy, chasing empty desires that never truly satisfy us, building elaborate and expensive prisons we deceptively call security. And in the end, when time inevitably runs out, we realize too late that we were never really owners of our lives. We were employees of our possessions, slaves to our insatiable desires, prisoners of our own unconscious and automatic choices. But it doesn't have to be this way. Freedom is available now. Not when you earn more money, not when you buy that dream house, not when you finally achieve that status you're chasing. Now, at this exact moment while you're watching this, through a decision that's simple in theory, but profound in practical consequences. Need less, desire less, be less enslaved by more. Seneca lived this in practice, not just in theory. He had significant wealth, but wasn't defined by it. Had material possessions, but wasn't possessed by them. Had access to Roman luxury, but found his true peace in conscious simplicity. Because he understood exactly where true, lasting freedom lay. The journey isn't easy. You've been conditioned your entire life, since childhood, to believe that more is always better, that accumulating is conquering and winning, that giving up possessions is personal failure and social setback. All of consumer society constantly pushes you in this direction, with sophisticated advertising and incessant social pressure. The commercials, the influencers, the friends, the family, all reinforcing the same message. You need more to be happy. You need more to have value. But Seneca invites you to deeply and courageously question these beliefs ingrained since childhood, to test for yourself with brutal honesty, to experiment with living with less and honestly observe what happens in your concrete life. Not as painful and forced sacrifice you need to endure, but as a liberating and voluntary experiment you consciously choose. Not as sad deprivation imposed by external circumstances, but as conscious liberation chosen by internal wisdom. And then you discover, through your own concrete experience, not through abstract theory, that the philosopher was absolutely right 2,000 years ago. That real and lasting wealth is in needing little to be genuinely happy and truly free. That freedom doesn't come from having more material options, but from needing less to live well. That peace doesn't come from conquering more external security, but from developing internal strength that no crisis can shake. Supreme freedom isn't doing everything you want without limits or consequences. It's wanting only what really truly matters to your soul. It's being conscious owner of your limited time in this short life. It's living according to your deepest and most authentic values, not according to the values they've sold you since childhood. It's having real and constant mental peace, not just stolen moments of fleeting calm. It's being able to choose consciously and with clarity, not just automatically reacting to circumstances that arise. And all of this begins when you stop blindly chasing more and learn to find true fulfillment in enough. When you let go of the crushing weight of unnecessary excess and discover the liberating lightness of the essential. When you stop being an obedient slave to your possessions and become sovereign master of your own life. If this video made you reflect on your relationship with having and being, if Seneca's wisdom touched something in you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what is the first thing you're willing to let go of to start recovering your freedom?